February 15th, 1942. The secure telephone line crackles to life in Churchill's war room. The Prime Minister picks up, expecting another routine update from the Far East. Instead, the voice on the other end delivers news that will haunt him for the rest of his life. Singapore has fallen. The impregnable fortress, Britain's Gibraltar of the East, the crown jewel of the Empire's Asia defences, has just surrendered to a Japanese force half its size. 85,000 British, Australian and Indian troops defeated by 36,000 Japanese soldiers in just 7 days. This isn't just a military defeat. This is the moment the British Empire's myth of invincibility died. The disaster, so complete, so shocking, that it would reshape the entire balance of power in Asia forever. Welcome back to the war. To understand how catastrophic this defeat was, you need to understand what Singapore represented. This wasn't just another colonial outpost. Singapore was the linchpin of British power in Asia. Built over 2 decades at enormous cost, Singapore boasted the most advanced fortifications in the world, massive 15-inch naval guns, the same weapons that armed Britain's most powerful battleships, dominated the harbour. Underground bunkers, concrete emplacements, and a naval base that could serve the entire Royal Navy. The British called it Fortress Singapore. Military experts declared it impregnable. Even the Japanese themselves believed it would take months to capture, if it could be taken at all. But there was one fatal flaw in this fortress, one assumption that would prove catastrophically wrong. Before we continue, have you ever heard of this battle that the British Army lost? Let us know in the comments. Every gun, every fortification, every defensive plan was designed around one scenario: a naval attack from the south. The British were so convinced that any assault would come from the sea that they never seriously considered any alternative. Why would they? To the north lay the Malayan Peninsula. 400 miles of dense jungle, swamps and mountains. Military wisdom said it was impossible to move large forces through such terrain. Tanks couldn't operate in jungle. Artillery couldn't be transported through swamps. Any attack from the north would be suicide. The Japanese had a different opinion. While British planners dismissed the jungle as impassable, Japanese commanders saw it as the perfect cover for a surprise attack. They had been studying British defences for years, and they had identified the one direction Singapore couldn't defend: from behind. On December the 8th, 1941, just hours after Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces land on the beaches of northern Malaya. But this isn't the expected frontal assault. Instead of attacking British strongpoints, the Japanese do something unprecedented. They disappear into the jungle. What followed was a masterclass in unconventional warfare. Japanese soldiers travelling light and living off captured supplies move through terrain the British considered impassable. They used bicycles on jungle paths, carried boats to cross rivers, and moved their artillery piece by piece through the undergrowth. But the real genius was their tactics. Instead of fighting for every British position, they simply went around them. British forces would wake up to find Japanese troops behind their lines, cutting off their retreat. Faced with encirclement, entire British units would abandon their positions without firing a shot. In 55 days, the Japanese advanced 400 miles through impassable terrain, defeating every British force sent against them. By January 31st, 1942, they had reached the shores of the Johor Strait, the narrow waterway that separated mainland Malaya from Singapore Island. Lieutenant General Arthur Percival, commander of Singapore's garrison, now faced his worst nightmare. The enemy wasn't approaching from the heavily defended south. They were massed on the lightly defended north shore of the island. Percival had 85,000 men under his command. On paper, this should have been more than enough to hold Singapore indefinitely. But numbers meant nothing if they were in the wrong place. Those massive 15-inch guns that made Singapore impregnable, they were fixed in concrete emplacements, pointing out to sea. They couldn't be turned to face the real threat. Worse, they were loaded with armour-piercing shells designed to penetrate battleship armour. The northern shore, which should have been Singapore's strongest defence, was its weakest point. Percival had spread his forces thin across 70 miles of coastline, leaving each sector dangerously undermanned. On February the 8th, 1942, under cover of darkness, the first Japanese assault boats crossed the Johor Strait. If you were in Lieutenant General Percival's footsteps, what would you have done? Let us know in the comments. Before we continue, check out our awesome new t-shirt that's just dropped this weekend, and check out our membership perks. Now back to the action. What happened next defied all military logic. The Japanese attacking across open water against a fortified position should have been slaughtered. Instead, they found scattered, demoralised defenders who had been retreating for 2 months. The Australian 22nd Brigade, defending the northwest sector, fought bravely but were quickly overwhelmed. Japanese forces poured across the strait, establishing beachheads faster than Percival could respond. Within 48 hours, Japanese forces had captured Singapore's reservoirs and airfields. The city's water supply was cut off. The RAF's remaining aircraft were destroyed on the ground. Civilian refugees clogged the roads, making military movement impossible. But the final blow came from an unexpected source: fuel. Singapore's massive fuel reserves, stored in tanks near the harbour, were set ablaze to prevent their capture. The resulting fires created a smoke cloud visible for miles, turning day into night and creating the apocalyptic backdrop for Britain's greatest defeat. By February the 14th, Japanese artillery was shelling the city centre. Civilian casualties mounted. The hospital was overflowing, and Percival faced an impossible choice: fight to the last man in a battle he couldn't win, or surrender to save civilian lives. On February the 15th, 1942, at 6:10 p.m, in a small room at the Ford Motor Factory on Singapore's outskirts, Lieutenant General Percival sits across from General Yamashita, commander of Japanese forces. The surrender document lies between them. Percival's hands shake as he signs away Britain's greatest fortress. In 7 days of fighting, he has lost 5,000 men, killed or wounded. But worse than the casualties is what he's about to hand over: 130,000 prisoners of war, the largest surrender in British military history. Yamashita, meanwhile, can barely believe his victory. His forces are exhausted, low on ammunition, and down to the last few days of supplies. If Percival had held out for just 48 hours longer, the Japanese attack might have collapsed. But Percival doesn't know this. All he sees is a city in flames, civilians dying, and an enemy that seems unstoppable. Churchill, receiving the news in London, writes in his diary, "This is the worst disaster and largest capitulation in British history." The fortress that was supposed to be impregnable had fallen in a week. The myth of European invincibility in Asia died in that factory room. Japan had proven that Western colonial powers could be defeated. The shockwaves would be felt across Asia, inspiring independence movements and reshaping the post-war world. Singapore, 1942, the day Britain learned that preparing for the last war can cost you the next one. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. Did you know about this British military disaster? Hi soldiers, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. And check out our awesome new t-shirt and membership programs. And don't forget to check back in again soon. That's an order.